earlier. Um, what's up, buddy?
How are you, sir?
It's wheeling and dealing.
Wheeling and dealing, making the big money.
Trying.
Um, let's see. Well, we got a lot going on in the regulatory front, but let's get to that in a minute. DeFi Llama aggregator added Canto, which is
Ooh.
cool. And so I did a little swap, which went well. But what was interesting, where the fuck is that link? What was interesting was that the trade went through something called Yield Yak, which I had never heard of.
Hmm.
Um, and let me get this screen open. But it worked beautifully. And there was only one choice amongst the aggregated choices, but it was good. It was very good. I'm glad to see it. I'll use that. I'm happy for DeFi Llama to make a little money if they do
Hmm.
off of it, and I'm still getting the same amount. All I did was an unwrap of like 100 W Canto just to see how it go, but it went beautifully. I have no idea what Yield Jack is though, so I want to find out. I've never heard of it. It must be a new Canto project I don't know about. So let's see if we can find it out. So yesterday we were not here, but there was some news. Um, there was some news on the regulatory front in a couple of places. First, Brian Armstrong, CEO of Coinbase, talking about that the SEC is trying to get rid of staking for in the U.S. for retail customers. Well, of course, when you're Gary Gensler and your retirement plan is to be the middleman for institutional and crypto, you're gonna try to get rid of it. It's just fucking ludicrous, but here we go. But the more disturbing thing, well, first of all, so yet another thing that will push shit offshore, push users to, use VPNs and skirt the law and push talent out of the country, which is what will happen. But the other thing was,
Well, let me say one thing. Using a VPN in the US isn't you skirting the law. It's maybe another jurisdiction, but it's perfectly okay to use VPNs in the
oh,
US.
of course, yeah,
Yeah,
no, I'm
yeah,
sorry, but if
yeah.
we're supposed to be banned from using staking, then if we used a VPN to go to a foreign country to stake, a provider in a foreign country to stake, then we would be, well, skirting the law. I think
I
the
think
stake the
I
stake
think
operation
they
is the one that would be breaking the
there
law.
you
But
go.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
They're supposed to figure it out. Keep us out. You
So
know.
I have long maintained that the most significant weakness for crypto is bank onboarding, and
Hmm.
it turns out that currently the federal government is attempting to choke out crypto, according to Nick Carter, a highly respected analyst in the space and investor. They're trying to choke out crypto by scaring the banks. So they have put out from multiple regulatory bodies. They have put out not bans whatsoever ever with regards to crypto, but they have made the clear to the banks that I'm trying to find the wording that they use, but the wording that they use is basically this is dangerous. And so you may pay higher rates on insurance. You may be more susceptible to deeper dives into your books by regulators if you support and take crypto in. He also points out, all the pressure that's coming on to Silvergate, and that even despite a run on Silvergate for deposits, they still maintained and are still functioning and working well. But scolded them, my favorite Senator Warren scolded them for providing service to FTX and Alameda. One of the most active banks, Signature, serving crypto clients. It's announced its intent to have deposits ascribed to crypto clients. In other words, they'll give customers their money back and then shut down their accounts. They'll draw their crypto deposits down from $23 billion at peak to $10 billion. The FDIC and OCC released a joint statement on the risks to banks engaging with crypto, not explicitly banning banks' ability to hold crypto or deal with crypto, but strongly discouraging, here it is, them from doing so on a safety and soundness basis. And evidently, all of the regulators are using those words, safety and soundness, in their decrees. The Metropolitan Commercial Bank, one of the few banks that serves crypto clients, has announced a total shutdown of crypto asset related vertical. Silvergate stock fell to a low of $11.55 on the bank run, and insolvency fears having traded as high as $160 in March 2022. Binance announces that due to a policy at Signature Bank, they will only process user fiat transactions worth more than $100,000 for U.S. customers. The Federal Reserve denies crypto bank Custodia's 2-year application to become a member of the Federal Reserve System, citing safety and soundness risks. Kansas City Fed branch denies Custodia's application for a master account, which would give it the ability to use wholesale payment services and to hold reserves with the Fed directly. The Fed issued a policy statement discouraging banks from holding crypto assets or issuing stablecoins and broadens their authority to cover non-FDI insured state chartered banks, a reaction to Wyoming special purpose depository institutions like Custodia, which can hold crypto alongside fiat for its banking customers. National Economic Council releases a policy statement not explicitly banning banks from serving crypto clients, but strongly discouraging banks from transacting with crypto assets directly or maintaining exposure to crypto depositors. The DOJ's fraud unit announced an investigation into Silvergate. Binance suspends USD bank transfers. Fed statement is entered into the Federal Register, turning the policy statement into a final rule with no congressional review or public notice and comment period. And Protego and Paxos application to follow Anchorage and obtain full approval to become national trust banks are still outstanding past the 18-month deadline and appear likely to be eminently denied by the OCC.
Yeah, one of the things about Silvergate, I didn't realize that they had gotten a like $4.7 billion bailout. In that run.
I did not either. Yeah.
Yeah. I just saw that yesterday. And the stuff with Custodia, it's what we talk about also. It's about, having the Fed window or being, we talk about like the Fed balance sheet a lot and how they're letting the bonds and stuff roll off. The ones they use for quantitative easing, those balance sheet assets are shared amongst all the banks that have Fed window accounts or Fed accounts. So they want to keep them out of that. And I think it's all about the volatility of the assets, let alone, the fact that all the institutional guys are still in. They seem to all be really focusing on the retail side. And, look, we know both sides of that argument. People should be able to do what they want with their money, number one. Number two, there's a lot of hucksterism and, hustles going on in the retail facing side. So, what is the majority of that? I don't think so. I think the majority is pretty sound stuff, and it's pretty, should be up to the individual to decide. But they seem to be really focusing on that right now. And as you said, on the retail side, and then with the crypto businesses, kind of shutting them down from being able to get, these are ones that get funded by, say, VCs and go set up a bank account. And maybe they don't even have any crypto, but they're still getting like, restrictions because they're in a crypto business.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's just this has been a tsunami that's built up over the last couple of years, or if this is just something just pulled the trigger over there. But there's definitely something afoot.
Nick says that there was an original policy called Choke Point during the Obama administration that attempted to stop gun manufacturers. It essentially was attempting to debank gun manufacturers and some other industries that they didn't like. Porn, porn. And gambling, online gambling. And so what they did then was they explicitly forbade interaction or with I can't remember how I phrased it, but the bottom line was the way they did it then was much different than what they're doing now. What they're doing now is basically saying, well, if we just put enough pressure on the banks then they're not going to be able to operate whatsoever in crypto because they're going to lose money. My gut tells me that there will be a couple of them that say, fuck it, if I have to pay more, but I can have, $100 billion in deposits. Yeah. If I can have all that business, I'll be the one of maybe 3 that remain in the US that are willing to do business in crypto until there's a full ban. And I think what he intimates is they're making it so they don't have to do anything from Congress, right? That when they do these federally administered regulatory body policies like this without explicitly banning, so it's difficult to have a court challenge to it, right? You can't, nobody can actually sue because there is no policy saying you're banned from doing this. And without Congress having to take action, so congressional people aren't putting their asses on the line, voting against or for whichever way their constituents would be opposed to it. This is a way to choke it out as much as possible without having to take an action, without the courage of setting regulatory policy. And I tend to agree. And like I said, I've always said that the greatest weakness for crypto is this onboarding of banks. Now, here's the crazy fucking thing. And we talked about this before, and Sean has talked about this before with us. Look, we have all of these currencies, right? And we have all these users, and we have some level of merchant adoption in some places. But the crazy thing is we have stable coins, we have inflation coins, yet nobody in this industry has made a concerted effort to actually go out into the world of merchants and focus on a niche or focus on a vertical and really make payments a part of being a merchant, right? Being able to accept it easily at retail, being able to accept it easily online. It's still, a difficult process and a difficult process for people to grasp. But if people realized that they didn't have to pay 3% to Visa anymore, and people realized that they could have instant money in their hands and they could actually then have other merchants they could spend it with, part of the circumvention of this problem is really that we have done a shitty job in crypto of getting it to be used for actually spending money. And that, to me, is our greatest failure as a community, is that we haven't done enough with our buying power to push people with whom we do business to accept it, right? And that doesn't mean, big international corporations are probably not going to adopt it wholesale because they risk regulatory scrutiny as well. But, getting your local favorite store to accept it might be something that's a little bit easier, but we need a path to that. So to me, look, this problem isn't going to be solved overnight. It's a massive problem. But it certainly seems like, the Biden administration is making a concerted effort to try to choke it out.
Well, it was interesting though, is, I was talking to some people this morning. I'm in DC right now, and the international stuff, remittances to international, to third world, other countries outside the US, they're all for that, because it lowers the transmission fees. It's kind of like the example of the UN using Stellar to pay aid workers in Ukraine. It goes straight into the individual's wallet. It doesn't go to some organization in Ukraine or any other country where, there's usually a slice off the top, Western Union, let's say. They're all for that stuff. I think they're just really trying to, like you said, because there's not the user adoption, that it's easier to choke this off. And I think they just have gotten overwhelmed with, all the FTX stuff, all the Terra stuff, all the, all the other, there was another, the Celsius stuff. I think that's kind of gotten them to where they're like, this just doesn't make sense. And then the other thing is that, when you're soon going to be able to get 6% interest on your cash deposits at a bank, all of a sudden, most of crypto's grown up with 0% interest on bank deposits, or very, very low. Right. And can you generate yield in a safe manner that's greater than 6%? I don't know. And I think that, they're kind of looking at that, the regulators as well, that, maybe the market makes the turn for everybody in that, when you can get 6% in a fully insured, investment at a bank, it's like all the foreign people send money to the US specifically because of that reason. Even though the cap, it says 250,000, even when it was 100, they were paying out, $1 billion deposits. I mean, they do not stop at 250. They have never stopped. Right. Banks they've honored the full amount. Right. So that you're going to get your money. So I think the issue here now is, when volatility ceases and, in some of the major ones, when it becomes more stabilized through more usage, like you said, then are you going to be able to get yields that exceed 6%? Is it just going to go to particularly stable coin yields? I mean, I was talking a lot about USDC, and it seems that, it was from what I heard, it was a confluence of sort of, SPACs and crypto that just set Gensler off basically, so that their stuff would never get approved. But, their whole model of building this ecosystem and everything of DeFi and yield farming, with USDC, I don't know if it can beat 6%.
Well,
so, I mean, maybe the fun stuff that we do can beat it, but,
sure.
We're not putting the, college savings into it, or the, the mortgage or anything, or the rent or whatever. And some people are. And I think that that's where, they're only seeing those cases. They're not seeing the, successes, so to speak.
Right. And I obviously they aren't. And what's interesting is, I just posted up the interview I did with iPoor, which is trying to basically bring LIBOR to DeFi. Those are the kinds of things where interest rate swaps and mortgages and everything else can come into crypto. And I think there are going to be opportunities. Who was it the other day I saw was trying to do weren't we talking about the other day on chain for the bond market? Oh God, what the hell was that?
I know we talked about it a lot. I just can't remember who the player was.
I can't either. Anyway, so, we'll start to see some of those come in here. And then those become, from what my perspective is those become use cases for the power of what the blockchain can bring to the financial protocol.
Yeah.
But me, I also advocate that we should flip this conversation and make it about the transparency and security and safety that blockchain and crypto could bring to finance and solve a lot of the problems that exist now currently in the system, also reducing the cost of enforcement dramatically and the bureaucracy administration around that, et cetera. But, I'm not in charge of government lobbying for crypto these days. So.
That's a really good point. I did have some conversations where people were talking about, that there's there seems to be in the policy circles that they're talking about that nothing's really truly decentralized. That, because I kind of brought up the point about, FTX and all the other stuff, that they were centralized plays, marketed as crypto plays to traditional finance players. And then we got into a discussion about decentralization and that there's always someone who has, can influence that. And I said, yeah, right now there is. But I said, you need to look at some of these other ones where it's just running on its own. And I threw a couple of names out and I said, when you throw AI on top of that, a fully uncontrolled organic chain or, that's running in the wild, I said, that's when it's going to get really interesting. Well, they're not even thinking about that. It's like, or maybe they are now, but, they weren't this morning. So, it's like, that is the kind of stuff where I think it gets real interesting. And the other thing that I got from them was that, they fully recognize that a lot of this is going to get absorbed up in the banks. That's going to then, cause lower fees to consumers and things like that. I mean, it's that example we always say about if you want to wire money to, say, Kenya or something. I'm not picking on Kenya, but just pick a country, where it takes like a week to get there and it goes through all these gates and, you're taking off 25% of the money.
Yeah.
And then Ripple or Stellar or somebody, just to pick the obvious ones, you can move that money for 10 cents. And everybody's like, well, why would the banks do that? And it's like, well, because the banks, instead of charging 600, they're going to charge 300. And, so the consumer saves, but at the same time, the bank's gross margin on that transaction went from 20% to, 95%, let's say.
Right.
So it's a win-win for both sides. So they're recognizing all of that. I think that they're just, really worried about contagion leaking from this into the, fiat system. And of course, I don't know if that really can happen, at levels that would really damage the system. I mean, look, FTX, what did it really do?
Yeah, exactly.
It didn't take any, it took out Gemini and Genesis for a while and DCG, but those will all recover. Yep. I saw Gemini settled up with Genesis in bankruptcy court. So, I mean, after all the hullabaloo and notes and angry letters out in the public and this and that, everybody was in bankruptcy court at that point. Even
Yep.
the Winklevi were in it, even though they
Yeah.
were bitching about it. So, and I don't know the terms, but I think they were made whole. So, the Gemini earned people. So, it didn't really contaminate the system, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Right.
And then
Right.
remember when Sean had his chart up last week, not the triple resistance one, but the crypto quant one that showed the institutional money in BTC.
Right. Yep.
And that's been basically a flat line for the last couple of years. I mean, they haven't dumped.
Yeah.
So, again, it didn't contaminate or contagion into the system at that point. So, hopefully it's not as draconian, or it's going to maybe get the cream to rise to the top. I don't know. But they're also fully aware that crypto London's an alternative, as is Hong Kong now.
Right. Absolutely.
With their attraction program. So, they don't seem too worried about that because they think that the quality stuff will just figure out how to play within this new rule framework, I guess. And then eventually, it'll be, I guess, when it's less volatile, it'll be in the deposit side of the banks, not just fiat stuff. So a lot of work to do, obviously, and a lot of downside to come. But, it's kind of one of those things you definitely want to be careful right now if you're, because, they are looking at software developers involved, and that was confirmed. So, I think it's, but they recognize that there's limits to what they can do at that point. So
I had a call today with a project that I've interviewed in the past, with a really cool product. I don't want to name them right now. But they developed a system that could be interpreted as, investment advisory in some way. And so they have paused their product and are pivoting their company away. They were in the middle of raising a round and killed the round, because they'd gotten some bad advice from attorneys originally, hadn't gone to securities attorneys. Anyway, they had then since gotten better advice, which was, kind of what you're doing is very hands-on and could be interpreted as securities violations. And so they're moving out of that. But as the developers, they deployed smart contracts that theoretically could have been completely automated for the strategies that they were putting forth. But they just really felt like there was the walls might be closing in on them. And so they decided to bail on what they were doing. So it does have an impact, and it does scare people. And that's what they want to accomplish, is they want to scare developers. The problem is they're going to scare developers. They're going to scare talent out of the country. And there are going to be countries that say, hell yeah, get on over here. We'd love to have a base of financial developers who can create the next generation of financial applications.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Sean said, "You're welcome back to the empire. We won't hold your mistake of leaving against you that much." It makes me want to pull up the song from the music. No, the song from the musical where it's the king singing.
London.
No,
I don't know.
You'll be back. Oh my God, I'm drawing a total blank. Hold on. I got to pull this
Maconda?
No, from
Lion
Hamilton.
King?
From Hamilton.
Oh, Hamilton. Got it. Okay.
Anyway, it reminds me of the king singing "You'll Be Back." It's a funny song. It's one of my favorite songs from that musical. Anyway,
it reminds me of the song. What is it? London's calling. It's calling my name. I think that's the Clash, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Sean would know, but that's where it's going. And look, there can be two sets, like we talked about before. The geofencing or the deglobalization between fully on regulated, and then London serving kind of like as a crypto hub. They're still very accommodating. I told you the story when I was there a couple of years ago for that client that we both did a little work for. When I met at Hogan Lovells conference, the British Council people, and one of the ladies there, she's like, why don't you do it in London? There's only one regulator to talk to. And, you basically go sit down with them and they eyeball you and see if you look trustworthy or not. And, You talk to them for a couple hours, and then they say yes or no. But I made the rounds. I went through the London mayor's office, and ended up a couple of law firms, and ended up there. And, they were like, I was like, everybody's already here already. They're all in Cambridge. And they were like, no, British jobs. Great. Do what you want. Just don't do any offerings.
Exactly.
Like that. Yeah.
Exactly.
So they're much more wide open. And London's a great place too. So I can see a lot of stuff heading that way. It's only a 5-hour flight from the East Coast, unlike Hong Kong, where it's a all day thing. Is that you? Is that you dressed up last night?
I'm playing this for Sean.
Oh.
Not a price that you're willing to pay. You cry in your tea that you hurl in the sea when you see me go by.
Is that King George or somebody?
Yeah. It's right after U.S. independence, and in the musical Hamilton, he sings this song, "You'll Be Back."
Remember, despite our estrangement, I'm your man. You'll be back.
Picture Sean singing this.
Yeah, we got it. Sean's got to start wearing that hat, that crown, or whatever for the show.
Why won't it let me stop? It won't let me stop sharing it. There we go.
We need a powder wig for Sean.
Now I'm going to have to go fucking edit the video because YouTube's going to block it.
Oh.
Fuck. Shizzy said, BYN Mellon is a hero. Came out and said crypto is here forever. Oh, that's fucking great. I hadn't heard that, dude.
Yeah.
Oh, shit. Really?
Yeah, those guys are players. I mean, I remember when Chemical Bank merged into them, and I knew like the family that owned Chemical Bank. I mean, well, I don't want to say anything negative, but let's just say they were a little high strung. But I mean, I don't know. Sometimes, those families that have been around for generations and generations, they get a little
Look at that. I didn't even see this. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
No, I was saying they get a little erratic. But yeah, no, these guys are always on the edge.
Well, there's the one. That's the one we were talking about, right? The one that says, fuck it, I'll own it all. Give it all to me.
And those guys are, they're super connected, in a
Thanks, Shizzy.
Back room, wood paneled cigar kind of way. So that's a big move because that's the old money bank, basically.
There you go. Well, I tell you what, I've been having banking issues with one of our companies for quite a while, with good old Bank of America. So looks like I will be taking a look at BNY Mellon. Renoro, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. No, I was going to say one thing when you were talking about choke point earlier. It made me remember back in like 2010, and I was advising a biotech company that it was a conglomerate, so they had an office in Sardinia where there was a research lab and some grants coming from like the EU. And they would pay me from there. And so it would wire into my bank. And all of a sudden I started seeing these notices on the statement that said, remember, if you're having online gambling winnings coming to your account, you have to declare those for taxes. And I looked at it and I was like, well, it's not online gambling. It's like, consulting fees. But that was probably part of that choke point.
Choke point.
Yeah.
I'm sure it was.
Mm-hmm.
Ronoro says the reg bodies all got the same memo. You have winning and unwitting scams. Most projects are well-meaning but logically flawed, so users will lose regardless. Yeah, there's probably a lot of that. RWA will change this. DeFi home loans and on-chain rental revenue, what have you. Okay. Niblet says the mechanics of crypto as a medium exchange is horrible on many levels. And Ronora says, yeah, it's a slow as fuck database. Sean says the idea that crypto and TradFi can coexist is missing the point. We are in the biz of displacing them. A pushback is a great sign. Yeah, look, you're right. There, a part of that is that yes, their fear is prevalent, and that is absolutely a good sign. But at the same time, we're not going to throw a switch and suddenly crypto dominates the financial world. So at some point, we have to move. Start pushing that pressure forward into spending and into transactional and into merchants if we're going to make any progress in overthrowing that. Niblet says crypto is great for intermarket units of account, but terrible for intramarket media of exchange. Well, it depends on the crypto. Depends on its value. It depends on its volatility. It depends on the chain it's on and how fast it goes. There's a lot of a lot of potential there. Got my free merch on today, Joe. My Phantom merch.
Cool.
Yeah, Romero says the real fun is in the trustlessness, transparency, and financial decentralization. I totally agree. But at the same time, there is a ton of potential on the medium of exchange. Shizzy pointed out it was Hamilton. Eamon said, love Hamilton. So dang good. Great musical, by the way. If you've never seen it, it's awesome. Euphoric said there was a good article on CoinDesk today about how useless the FCA is. It needs desperate reform before London can become a crypto hub. Check it out, man. And Niblet said Pittsburgh.
Is it crypto?
Is that BNY Mellon? Is that where it's from?
Oh,
I don't know. Is that where
But
BNY
Carnegie
Mellon's
Mellon.
from, Niblets?
Yeah, Bank of New York is the part of it, and then Mellon would be part of, from Carnegie Mellon, which, I don't know if anybody knows this story, but, Chuck Schwab, the way Chuck Schwab was created was JP Morgan sent Chuck Schwab up to Fuqua, who was, I think, Carnegie's, right-hand man, and Carnegie Steel in Pittsburgh, it was the billion-dollar corporation back in the day, the biggest in history. And he went up and met Fuqua on the golf course, which I think was Central Park at that point, and, pitched a deal, and then they bought it. So his finder's fee was so huge, he could go start up his own bank. But, there were underground train that would go uptown. It was like, it was farmland, basically. But that's kind of how they all came together between like New York and Pittsburgh. It was Pittsburgh, Carnegie was making all the steel that built all the U.S. cities.
Aha, very nice. Shizzy said we should organize a protest outside of the SEC with a bunch of headless cocks.
Lunchtime.
Shizzy so wants us to do that. I promise, Shizzy, I'm going to check out the AI and see what I get out of it for headless cocks. We'll get something going, hopefully, because I love that.
Well, we'll make the legendary. I guess we'll call the legendary. Maybe it'll be Chubb.
That's good. That's good. That's good. That's very good. For those of you that have missed Monday's episode, I happened to be out and about in Miami and saw these roosters/cocks for sale, and told the story that in Miami, if you live in an area where some particular religions are practiced in the Caribbean, Santeria, that you will wake up on the weekend in the morning with a headless cock in the intersection near your home. And I happened at one point in my life to live behind a house in my first marriage that had normal rituals on the weekend for Santeria. So we always had a beheaded rooster in the intersection.
Was your wife like a high priestess?
She was not. She was not, or I might be a headless cock.
Or have one. Oh man.
Shizzy, I need this NFT. It's all I can think about. Okay, dude.
I guess I'm trying to like teleport or telepath the mental image you have going on there, Shizzy.
Yeah, Shizzy.
A sad bit disturbing.
All right, let's see what else I have today. Oh, so Ignis, DeFi Ignis, great guy. Follow him. Follow his research. Really good. Does good shit. So MakerDAO just announced Spark Protocol, a competitor to Aave, and he said it's a sharp turn from Maker's old benign strategy of integrating DAI into existing DeFi protocols. Now Maker wants to build its own DeFi ecosystem. Old Maker is dead. Long live the new Maker. And then he did a thread explaining it all. But my reply to him was, it feels like all of the old school blue chip protocols are now trying to copy Frax. And build out an entire infrastructure of products so that they can do everything in one place, right? But my point was that, and he replied back, well, they were already working on their ETH coin prior to that. But my point was they are very slow moving, right? That's why they get to be the blue chip. They have serious governance barriers to getting anything or massive changes done in the protocol. So they are going to be very slow moving, and biz dev for them is going to be very difficult and slow moving. Whereas Frax is a frigging biz dev machine, right?
Yeah.
So right now, speed to me is more important in the general DeFi ecosystem than being the old blue chip. Now, that is not to say that Maker can't advance dramatically over time, and they will be very attractive to TradFi, right? They'll be very attractive to institutional money coming into the space because they are a blue chip. They are stable. They do have a slow governance process, right? So I'm not trying to downplay what MakerDAO can do, and I think they're making the right strategic moves and building an ecosystem around their project. But the Ronora says BizDev is super underrated in crypto, and I totally agree. And Joe and I talk about this all the time. And the machine of the number one BizDev machine in all of DeFi right now is Frax.
Polygon. You think Frax over Polygon?
Well, I'm sorry. Polygon is a chain. I'm sorry. I should have said more specific to protocols. Yeah, those two, nobody can touch. Nobody can touch those two. And if you look at the scale of Polygon, the size of that operation and what's there, that puts them a notch above Frax because they move as fast as Frax does. And they are a much larger organization with much more regulatory pressure than Frax has. So I would say, Joe, that I would probably put Polygon number 1 in all of crypto and Frax number 2 in all of crypto for BizDev. I can't think of anybody else that cranks the way they do, man.
You're right. Absolutely. I mean, I love, that's what USDC is trying to copy is Frax's model. Yeah. And it got all shot down. But there was something else I was going to say. I saw a clip when I was getting off a flight this morning. I didn't get to research it, but that Aave has just issued a stablecoin today.
Well, it was supposed to be coming out. I don't know if it's out yet or not. Is it? Let me check.
I thought it was in one of those like market news feeds in Telegram where they just send like.
It's coming. Let me see.
Because you were talking about, I saw Aave up on the screen there. I think it's GRO maybe, or what? I can't remember.
Yeah, it's Grow. It is Grow. Here it is. Oh no, Go. GHO is now on. Oh, it's on test. Oh, that was 3 hours ago. It's on testnet.
Okay, got it.
Early, so it's not out yet, but coming, I guess, soon.
So I'm wondering how many more stables are coming into the space. It's it's kind of one of the issues that the regulators are really looking at, obviously.
Yeah.
But I get why. I can see now a market for all the stables, where it's pairings on stables and capturing yield, or it's the gate to all these massive protocols, or maybe all the yield farms. Maybe I'm trying to remember. I haven't been on Aave in a while, but I was always just staking and borrowing there. I don't remember big yield farms on Aave. Maybe it's changed since a year ago or 6 months ago.
No. Okay. No, I don't think so.
Maybe they're thinking about pairings, things like that, like USDC was. Everybody, to your point, everybody's copying Frax.
Yeah. Ronora says Web2 companies are typically 30 to 40% salespeople. Crypto, it's like 10%. And he says saying this as a BD in the space. Dude, it's like so critical, absolutely critical. You know what? That's why I was so excited about Phantom when we were at Quantum, because I think that team is gearing the fuck up for full court BD BizDev. And if you watch Juan on Twitter, man, he is so aggressive, like really happy to see what he's doing, because he is aggressively leading the marketing over there. And I think that will influence what the BD team is doing over there. So they're all doing a really great job. Everybody's gearing up. Resources are allocated. So I'm hopeful for them as well. Niblet says, does DAI need to build out use cases because as a stable, USDC/USDT might be reaching a tipping point as the de facto stable standard tokens? Most likely it does need to build out use cases and have more uses permeate the ecosystem. And certainly I would prefer DAI over USDC and USDT as the de facto standard. But I also don't have a problem with Frax having the standard, but Frax has a lot of dependency, just like everything else in the space, on USDC. So, that was, talk about a strategic fucking error. It was everybody sucking up to USDC from the beginning of DeFi summer and making it the de facto standard. That to me was just colossal fucking lazy ass. That was kind of that lazy ass, well, it's there and everybody's using it. It's got the liquidity. So I'm going to do it. And then I'm going to do it. And then I'm going to do it. And then they just built on that momentum and it was impossible to get out from under. And now we're kind of fucked if we truly want something more decentralized. So,
well, what's interesting about that is, remember all of those at the beginning, there was always questions about what's backing the assets. And yet both of them, USDC and USDT, now are 100% backed by, US treasuries or cash deposits. There's no commercial paper in there. So they've kind of cleaned up their act, but the USDC mission, as communicated during that period when everybody was signing up to them, was getting to that big ecosystem with yield farming and everything else. And now they're not going to I don't think they're going to get there because, I don't know if this is, I saw this information in PitchBook, but, there was a big deal at the end, another big raise at USDC. I want to say with Concord or somebody. It was a reverse merger into a SPAC with some other element to it. And, I didn't realize, but somebody else I know was advising the Concord side, and that deal got shut down. And I think that was the SEC shot it down completely.
Probably.
So, see, I think there's a lot of open space for new stables to come into play. And I think the market's looking really good for Frax.
Yeah, I agree. So Niblet says, so USDC is like the Windows of crypto. Yeah, with full spyware. I just read a post today about somebody did a study on with Wireshark showing how much telemetry is built into Windows out of the get-go now. Like everything is phoning home. Marketing agency, marketing data phoning home. The second you turn on a Windows machine out of the box today, it's a fucking mess of spyware. Euphoric said, MakerDAO are creating an Aave fork called Spark. Yeah, man, that was the originating tweet that we were talking about that Ignis DeFi had written about Spark. And that keyed us off. Tokenized Treasury, Ronora says, tokenized Treasury securities will go a long way to improve DeFi native stables.
Yeah.
Calling USDC crypto is missing what crypto is. Yeah, totally agree.
Yep.
Totally agree.
Absolutely.
Totally agree. So Shizzy gave us our segue because I already had this one loaded up because I have a bunch to say about this. So yesterday, he said, I highly recommend the Bankless podcast from yesterday about Canto with Zach Cole. I'm not a huge fan of the Bankless guys, but it was really good. So I am going to say that Zach did, out of a scale of 10, I give Zach a 5.5 for his appearance yesterday. And that's not Zach's fault. That's because he was nervous. You could tell by the way he was spinning around in the chair. And he wasn't thinking about the core messaging of Canto when he was speaking. And so I tweeted yesterday and said, hey, Canto folks, love all the attention we're getting, but we really need to get our messaging together. So I'm actually, I've exchanged some messages with some of the core contributors on the team last night with some of my thoughts on the messaging. But what Zach did well was he countered the Bankless boys who were bashing Canto on Twitter and said, I'm a fucking Ethereum OG. I helped build Ethereum. Don't cast aspersions on fucking Canto until you talk to some people and understand what you're talking about, which was great. And that pushed them back on their heels so that when he came on, they had done a little more research. They still didn't understand everything, but enough that they were friendly instead of trying to attack him because he is an Ethereum OG, right? And so
Zach.
Zach.
Zach is? Okay, got it.
So the conversation, and I recommend everybody listen to the conversation. The conversation went very well. The boys were positive. They were feeding him, positive points about Canto, what its purpose is. They had nice discussions about contract secured revenue, which is a cool part of Canto. But Zach, as much as I like him and he's brilliant, Zach's not a messaging guy. He's a developer, right? And so where Zach blew it was he never brought the whole thing together, right? So they start the conversation off talking about contract secured revenue. Well, contract secured revenue was just added to the protocol. And contract secured revenue is where if you deploy a smart contract on Canto and you don't charge fees, then you get 20% of the gas fees that your contracts generate, right? So if you agree not to charge the users fees, if you agree to do that, then you get 20%. Well, first of all, he never clarified that it was contracts that don't generate fees. Secondarily, everyone that talks about this as a subsidy when, technically you could maybe define it as a subsidy, but when you're going to go out and message about something, you should be messaging about what it really is. And what this is the elimination of rent seeking for the contracts that choose to take CSR, because it allows you to not charge fees but still generate revenue. And here's the beauty of it. It's market-based. So the best contracts, the best tools, the best dApps are going to get the most use, which will get the most gas, which will make them the wealthiest from a revenue perspective as a contract. So it creates the right incentives to help and protect consumers, users, retail people, whatever, without fees, and to also, support the ethos of this network. So CSR is an augmentation of the ethos. What he didn't address was when people talk, and this is what the same thing that happened with that stupid Unchained podcast last week, was they didn't understand how the system works. The core ethos of this thing was, let's not charge people for using core functions that are critical to all of DeFi, lending and DEX, right? Core to any financial system. You got to be able to exchange fucking money. You got to be able to borrow and lend money. You can't have a financial system without those pieces. So the idea is, let's not charge fees for that. Let's make it a critical core protocol component. If somebody else wants to compete with those in the network, they can. But our goal is to make it so we're not charging fees, and that we're trying to pursue decentralization that way. Zach didn't bring all those pieces together. He didn't make it clear how CSR ties that in, how lending and the DEX are feeless, and how all of those together support the ethos. The other thing he missed is contract secured revenue eliminates the need for projects to release shitty tokens, right? They don't have to focus on liquidity. They don't have to focus on whether or not they have to boost the price of their token, whether or not investors are going to dump their token, whether or not retail is going to get fucked and their project's going to die, how they're going to maintain the curve properly. They don't have to worry about any of that. That all goes the fuck away. So you don't end up with this endless list of 1 million tokens on the chain, because there's a revenue stream for them, right? So that's another thing. The other thing he completely missed, again, that feeds the ethos, is when you get the revenue as a developer from the CSR, it goes into an NFT. You don't have to sell the NFT, and you have future revenue that's coming into that NFT. You can borrow against that NFT and never even probably have a tax implication. Talk to your tax attorney. I'm not a tax attorney, but reduce your tax liability potentially, depending on the country you're in, because you're borrowing against future revenue that comes into the NFT. So you don't ever have to give up that revenue. You don't ever have to sell it, but there are going to be a lot of things that can be built around these NFTs. The beauty of it is, if you need to hire another person onto your team, you can borrow against the NFT and the revenue stream that you have, or the revenue that's already collected in it, and you can hire people. If you want to start a sister project, you can get funding to start the sister project. So all in all, it creates a flywheel effect that feeds each other. And so my whole point with Zach was, we just have to learn how to be more cohesive about messaging. And I'm obviously not the head of marketing at Canto. I have no role in the core team of any shape or form, but people have to learn. This is true of any protocol, any project, any chain. You got to learn to stick to the ethos of the messaging. So
quick. No, that's a really good synopsis. 3 key things. I guess my question would be, when you borrow against the future earnings or future revenue, kind of like the bank equivalent would probably be like factoring or something. Do you pay that back, or does the payback come from the future revenue?
Come from the future revenue. Well, it depends. Okay. People will be able to build it any way they want. So what I expect is that people are going to build protocols that take advantage of those NFTs, right? So there'll be new protocols that spin up that are earning gas fees, earning their own CSR revenue in an NFT, that they'll be borrowing protocols. Maybe there'll be trading protocols. Maybe there'll be betting protocols. Who knows?
But also what's cool is a whole bunch of derivative stuff you can do there to lever up things. But at the same time, what I like is that it allows you to have a cheap source of, financing, like you said, so you don't have to issue a token. Right. I guess the only dependency then is you are dependent on the Canto token then. So if anything happened to that, it takes down everybody else. But one other thing I wanted to ask was that with the share of the gas fees part of the model, when as far as protocols that don't charge the users, what constitutes charging the user? Is it just transaction fees or percentages?
Yeah, it's like when you go to DEX, and they charge you 0.051 fee.
Yes.
That's gone. There's none of that.
Okay.
Now, if you wanted to start a DEX on Canto that did charge fees because you think you have superior platform, superior product, whatever, you're free to do that. Nobody's blocking fees on the chain.
Yeah.
Right. It's just they are encouraging people to build things that don't charge fees because you will get that 20% of revenue. If you think you can make far more money charging fees because you will get people to use your protocol because your protocol is better than anything else out there, more power to you, dude. It's a market, right?
But you know what's cool too is it almost serves as if you come in and launch your MVP or whatever first version is, and you don't charge fees, you just take parts of the gas fees. It's almost like an incubator model because I suspect that you could switch to fee charging later if you want.
Yeah.
Once you scale up and have bazillions of users.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool too. And finally, because I don't know as much about it as you do, and how does like the gas fees compare to say Polygon or Phantom?
It's cheap. Yeah, it's cheap. It's pennies, So Canto has to grow a lot it is growing a lot, but it has to grow a lot more for that 20% to be worth a lot, right? But the beauty of it is if they do against future revenue, you may say, okay, I'll give you a loan against a year of revenue, right? Instead of a month of revenue. So, but yeah, it's like Polygon level, Phantom level fees.
Well, what's neat is that NFT part on the future earnings, it has a nice little Alchemix feel to it.
Sure.
In that you're borrowing against the future, which
auto pay
I like. And you don't have to go like find yield to pay it off.
Yeah.
Like in this pay back the loan model, you have to execute on your business.
Yeah.
And run a good business to pay it off. And that keeps all the incentives aligned really well.
Yeah. And here's the other thing that could happen. 10 projects could get together and say, you know what? We're each going to take 10% of our stream of money that's coming into our NFT, and we're pooling it to get more people to build the tools we need, right? So we think together collectively, we need a protocol that does X or we need a protocol that does Y. We're going to invest each of us our 10% of our revenue stream into this project because we want this project to happen. And then we get 10% back as a revenue stream into our NFT again once they start producing the revenue. I mean, there's all kinds of shit you could do. Yeah. When you said incubator, you made me think of that because there's all kinds of ways to leverage this revenue to turn it into growing Canto more. And the beauty of it is they could get together and fund marketing or biz dev, right? Outside of the network. Because at the end of the day, the alignment of incentive is more people doing more shit on Canto means we all make more money. Right. Yeah. So that's what I love about the model. So.
No, it is cool. It's very unique. And I'm really curious to see where they're going to be in, 2 years, let's say.
Yeah.
It could very easily be $1 billion, valuation, let's say, if they execute.
Yeah. I mean, look, number 5 in trading volume right now, 6th or 7th in TVL. No, lower than that in TVL. I think it's 13, 14 in TVL, somewhere in there. Niblet says, I recently caught a few minutes of a Twitter Spaces with Canto the other day. I had to turn it off there for a couple of minutes. Jesus, they need messaging. Sean says, the bankless crew are headless cocks. In fact, just cocks.
Hey, we could do like each of them. It could be a character of our headless cocks.
Listen, their maximalism bothers the shit out of me. I forget which one it is. Only one of them is a real toxic guy. But I will say I will say this. I got really fed up with them and stopped listening to them because of the maximalism. Everything was slanted. Everything was, just ridiculous. They took that criticism to heart, not mine, but collectively the community, and they actually toned it down some. Look, I think they're still can be dicks, but they're better. But I don't want to take away. I don't want to take away from the fact that Bankless has done a shit ton to onboard people in this space, to train people, to spread the word about protocols, to talk about the technical issues, to talk and push for decentralization. They have been a powerful part of the Ethereum community, and I don't want to completely discount it just because they annoy the fuck out of me sometimes. So, I want to be fair about from that perspective.
Yeah.
So.
Well, look, we all annoy the fuck out of people sometimes, right? I mean, I'm sure you have occasionally.
Only
I know
Joe.
I have.
Only you.
Yeah.
Only you.
But they're probably trying to outdo the toxic BTC maxis,
There you go.
So
there you go.
Yeah, so they feel like they got to go for it. But
you're right. The straw for me was they did an episode a year or so ago when the title of the episode was Everything You Ever Wanted to Know About Solana, right? I thought, they're bringing on Solana experts, and I'll get to hear, how Solana functions and how it works. Shit I hadn't taken the time to dive into, and in an hour and a half listening to the podcast while I'm driving around. And instead, it was them fucking baiting a bunch of guests that are not Solana experts into bashing Solana. Now, look, I've done plenty of bashing of Solana now that I understand more about what's going on over there, but it was just not, they don't claim to be journalists, but it was just deceptive. It was just, anyway, it felt like politicians. Niblet says, our UX mistakes are good because it filters our community of people who really want to be here. I guess this is something that somebody at Canto said. That's just stupid. Shizzy said, give Zach a break, laughing out loud. I really liked the guy. He's a completely likable guy. That's why the overall sentiment around his appearance was positive. He is genuine, likable. He means well. I just want to help them with their messaging. That's all. And it's not his fault. No one's ever said, they've never gotten together because they're not a centralized entity. Nobody's ever gotten together and said, okay, here's our talking points for today. The president of Canto has declared this is what we will discuss today. So people that don't have experience doing this don't know how to bring those messages together. So
yeah.
Niblet says transaction fees around about 0.70 Canto, and Canto's at 0.6 cents each. Niblet says, as a long-term investment, is it better to hold straight Canto and avoid the impermanent loss, or LP it with stable note, for example, to yield more Canto to get the IL feeling? So I'll tell you what I'm doing. I can't advise you on what you should do. I am staking Canto standalone in the staking on the website, and I am LPing Canto and Note. And then as I get rewards from Canto and Note staking, the lending protocol, I get rewards from the staking. Every other day, I pour all of it into Canto staking, and every other day, I divide it in half. I do 50% into Canto staking and 50% back into to balance out on the impermanent loss on the LP/lending. So that's what I'm doing, Niblets. May not be the smart thing. That's just what I'm doing. My goal really is to accumulate more Canto. I want to increase how much I'm getting out of the LP, but I don't want to have massive impermanent loss. So I want to stabilize it as much as I can, but I want to make sure I'm always pushing off more Canto into the staking. So,
but you're doing Canto with Note, right? Is that what you said?
Canto Note.
Yeah. So is it Note is stable?
Yeah, Note is a stable.
So if that one doesn't move, then I don't know. Is it really going to be?
There's a permanent loss on price, right? I don't think if Canto's pumping or dumping, there'll be a difference in price. And if people are trying to buy more Canto than Note, then there's always a chance of that.
Yeah, no, because I'm thinking even if the price goes way up and you get a little bit of impermanent loss, that it should net out if it goes the other way, because it's two correlated tokens.
Correct.
So it's probably not as like when we were doing all the stuff before with ETH and something, or two Plan B tokens together. Those can wildly swing in different directions.
Yep.
But it's almost the same as, it seems to me, it's more like just staking Canto, but getting more yield for it.
Yeah.
So it's a good strategy not financial advice, but it sounds like a good strategy to me.
Yeah. Niblets, my goal with this is not short-term profits, right? This is not something I'm putting a ton of money into, but I want to stack as much Canto as possible, because my goal is, look, if this experiment works, and, this gets to half of what Ethereum is, I'm a really fucking happy camper, right? And so if it doesn't, it doesn't. I'm not out a ton of money. So my goal is long-term stack as much Canto as I can. Just keep stacking Canto. So
let it
Niblet
ride.
says, question about long-term. Yeah, for me, it's how much more Canto can I get and stake in, earn that 21% on staking while still increasing the amount of Canto I'm getting on the LP lending. That's really the goal.
Well, that's how everybody really cleaned up in the last cycle. If you got in on a protocol that survived and did well and really took a run, and you were in those liquidity pools early on, a lot of those were 600% or something. Those people cleaned up. Millions of dollars.
Yeah.
So, but they don't all do that, obviously. So you got to just try to make some good picks and good bets. And this looks like one to me that is a good bet. In the sense of, because of who's there, who's building, and what they're trying to do. I think it's going to get that same sentiment that you see sort of amongst the BTC guys, the ethos element of that. It seems like it kind of translates that into, what we're going to call DeFi in a way that not many others can do.
Yep.
From the social infrastructure angle or public infrastructure angle.
Yeah, I mean, look,
I only own a few, so
a $10,000 investment in Ethereum at ICO worth 50 million today, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of the longer term bet I'm making. Is, hey, if this goes well, it keeps building, it keeps growing. I like the incentives. I keep helping to promote it. I have an incentive to make sure people know about it. Certainly I hold it. So, take that with a grain of salt. This is not financial advice. You should do what you think's best. This is a massive experiment. Nobody's done something like this completely before. It could all fail. It could crash and burn. Anything can happen. But for me, I'm making a longer term bet. I'd like to just keep stacking it and see what happens.
Well, I remember your very first crypto consulting firm. Wasn't that called like Hodl Consulting or something?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, there you go.
Yeah.
That's what you're doing. So,
well, look, and other things I'll sell for short-term profit. This, I want to see where it goes.
Smart move.
I did order a hat. I got a hat coming.
I saw that on Twitter. I was like, I can't remember who was tweeting about it, but that looked pretty cool. So,
all right. I have a bunch more to cover, Joe, but it's actually
let's go
past time and I'm late for a call. So we should probably wrap it up.
Let's do it.
I messaged him. That was quick, man. It feels like I think we ran everybody off with the Canto talk. Appreciate you guys sticking around. Niblets, Shizzy, Sean, Ronora, and tell me if I'm saying your name wrong, please. Euphoric. I think that's Eamon. I think that's the whole gang. We appreciate you guys being here. We appreciate you all adding to the conversation. It feels like family. We love all of you that are listening at home, on the podcast, in your car, watching on YouTube. Thank you so much. If you are listening on the podcast, please take 2 minutes to go to Spotify or Apple Podcasts, give us a rating and a review, and make sure you're subscribed so you hear about the latest episodes. Please, on YouTube, make sure you rate and review us. It's helpful. Make sure you smash that thumbs up. Joe would like you to smash it. There he goes. And make sure you subscribe and click the little bell so you get alerted about new episodes. We'll be back tomorrow with the one, the only Pub Sean, here to explain to us why we're all going to shit and should sell everything we own. No, I don't know.
Oh yeah, that's right. He's back on the Guinness tomorrow, right?
Is he?
What's today? I think
is that the deadline?
What is today? It might not be till next week. I can't remember,
okay.
but yeah, no, that could be our sponsor, Guinness.
There you go. DeFi at the pub. She's a great show, guys. Niblet says, bring on the Canto talk. Love you guys. Everybody have a great day. We'll be back with Sean tomorrow. Sean, I got to send you the link. Sorry, buddy. I forgot to send it to you for tomorrow's show. I'll do that shortly. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Joe, have a lovely afternoon.
You too, buddy. And we'll see everyone tomorrow. Thanks as always.
Bye-bye.